right. Some coffee there. We're going to go ahead and take a look at these clean guitars first. And I'm going to show you the before and after. Here is this first clean guitar. Now, I can't remember. Forgive me. Not trying to sound unorganized, but I can't remember if I gave you the electric guitars in stereo or not. Vic is my buddy. He's a co-producer, and he records with Native Instruments Guitar Rig, and he uses Logic. And I'm pretty sure everything he ever sends me is in stereo. So partly because actually everything's in stereo, and he doubles almost everything. Vic, I love you if you're watching this, but so if you've got a guitar left with a left and a right, and a guitar right with a left and a right, hopefully I cleaned that up for you. Sorry if I didn't, but being that I was co-producing this, I went through and cleaned up and deleted and chopped a bunch of stuff. And I'm pretty sure you have what I have in front of me here. But just in case, don't be afraid to take those stereo files, split them, pick a side. And then even in this case, Vic doubled every single part. So I would ditch the right side for one part and then the left side for another part, giving me just one take of each. I didn't want the doubled vibe for every layer, for every part. And so anyways, rambling about that, but I'm pretty sure you have what I have right here in front of me. And the before and after goes like this. Cool. Pretty simple. Then processing after. Very cool. So we cleaned it up, got a little more shine to it. We've got some verb, a couple different verbs. One that's focused on the top end, one that's focused on a lower mid-range decay. The step-by-step process on this, typically you'll see a pattern. I'm going to listen. The first thing I'm doing with most instruments is I'm going to take a high-pass filter, a low cut, and I'm going to go in and I'm just going to listen to the music. In this case, let's say we're in solo. That's too much. Not much below that anyways. So for the part that that's playing right now, there's not much below 200 or so, whatever that resonant frequency was. But when we get into later in the song like this, yeah, so not much happening below there, but we just get rid of that. I like to make sure that everything's cleaned up below 100 hertz for sure on just about everything. Sometimes I'll pull a piano back to like 85 or so. Sometimes the guitars, I leave it. I like maybe some of that, the power can come from some 60 in a guitar, some 60 hertz, boosting that. I know the Helios, there's a cool preset I use for that. I think I even may have used it here. We'll see that in a second maybe. But for the most part, a good rule of thumb, especially when you're first starting out mixing or you're up and coming, is to to sweep all the tracks and find what the lowest bit of frequency is that you want to keep, that you want to remain as part of that instrument. And for every single instrument, go through and pull this in and get rid of everything below whatever you don't need. And then listening back, you could always come in and pull it back a little bit more or take a little bit more out. But it's a good rule of thumb to get rid of most everything except for in like the kick, the bass, maybe some synth bass, obviously 808s and some of that stuff. But most instruments, there's not much you need below 70, 80 hertz anyways. And then if you have too many instruments that have frequency build, you can have a frequency buildup. Let's say you have your guitars and your piano and your Rhodes and your organ and you want them all to be warm and full. Well, that 70, 80, 100 hertz, 150 hertz, 200, that's going to start to build up across those frequencies, and you're going to find that it's just going to lead to messy mixes in your lows and your low mids. So a good rule of thumb is to start with a high-pass filter, a low cut, and blend that to taste. Just kind of pull that into where you like it. rambling on about filters here. Excuse me. There was a frequency that the frequency that was resonating was a little bit much for me, so I pulled back on the EQ, hit that, and the Fab Filter Pro Q2 has a great feature. Let's loop a little section here. Check this out. So let's say we wanted to pull that down. I click and I can pull down the analyzer there. So now it created a bell and it reduced it by that 5 dB or so. So anyways, kind of neat. That's pretty much what I did there, just to touch it up a bit. I felt like there was a little bit too much at 3K for whatever reason. Let's hear what that sounds like with it in. It's a little warmer without it there. Help it be a little bit more full. So that was that beginning EQ, just to filter out some of the stuff I didn't want. Then, of course, the LA2. Once again, this is mostly for character. I'm probably hitting this compressor a little bit more because I like the sound of, chimey, clean guitars through an LA2A. I think it works well. Let's check that out. Yep, so like I said, character, pretty straightforward there. The Isotope Alloy 2, would be willing to bet I dialed in a preset. Bright and Crisp is a good one. Excuse me. But a couple others that are really good are Clean and Glassy and Clean Pop Control is a fun one. And that coffee's getting my throat. I need to drink some water. It's getting late, guys. Midnight here. I'm an early riser usually, so forgive me if I'm rambling here. The equalizer is a big part of this preset. I loved what it did. Cut out some of those lows that I didn't want. Boosted some of those highs. I actually would probably be willing to bet that when I pulled up in this preset that I went back to this first Fab Filter Pro Q2 and reduced this because of what that preset did. So a little bit of trial and error. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit trail, but I do want to say that I'm very much so a feel mixer. If you like the way these mixes, hopefully you like the way my mix turned out, and that's why you bought the course, is you wanted an inside scoop. The whole point of this course is for a walkthrough into my mind and what I was thinking whenever I did this and my processes. But the whole trial and error, I love that. I love experimenting. I love trying new things, and I love going back and forth. And it's never a set it and forget it and walk away from it. I don't think I ever set any instrument or any element one way and then leave it alone. I think that's what takes me the time, is going back and EQing, and you're working against the mix. You're working against those other elements in the song. You don't just set something and leave it. So don't feel bad if you're second guessing yourself, or if you're going back to a certain element to tweak it or work it. Nothing is ever set and forget it when it comes to this mixing stuff, especially when we get into automation and how, writing faders and writing effects and all that kind of stuff. It's a always tweak the taste kind of thing. So moving on from that rabbit trail, that preset, pretty straightforward. We got the EQ boosting the highs. The exciter is once again being used as an EQ to drive some harmonic character into the mids and the highs. Let's hear that before and after. Very cool. I remember whenever I was doing this, I wanted a little bit more grit from the guitar, to have a little bit more of that amp tone. The amp was breaking up a little bit, and the compressor, same thing here, is just kind of controlling it, bringing some of the glossiness to this tone. Very cool. Guitars, I tend to compress a little bit harder. Clean guitars, 4 to, that could be 8-to-1 ratio. I like the way that feels on electric guitars. Distorted guitars, I don't really compress too much, sometimes for an effect or something, but you can see that these are pretty general settings. This is fast attack, fast release, and getting the compressor to work pretty good for us. Moving on to this little radiator harmonic saturation here. It's a pretty cool one. This is a new one for me. Good people over at Sound Toys. And this one I just, once again, wanted the amp to break up, and instead of driving it with any one plug-in, I did it in 2 stages. So we had the harmonic exciter from Alloy 2, and now we've got the Sound Toys. Very cool. So that's a big part of the tone right there is the little radiator. And then lastly, my Blue Cat pulling in the Waves guitar spring reverb. I like to play through the Waves guitar, but I also like that it comes with pedal emulations, and I like the effects. The spring reverb is actually pretty sweet. I sometimes will find myself using this spring reverb as its own channel to send things into, to send vocals into, and things like that. It sounds pretty sweet. And then I'll put an EQ on the back end, maybe compress it a little bit, do some cool stuff with that. The guitar in this case, I used it in line like I would a spring reverb pedal, and it sounds like this. You hear that a little bit. Let's boost it up in the mix. Kind of getting all surfer guitar on us, but the mix being back a little bit more gentle, felt like it worked for that, just to give it a little bit of a vibe, a little bit of a beachy vibe. The effects for this particular guitar, the Sun Chamber, is that Bricasti Sunset Chamber, and I'm pulling that in through the Liquid Sonics Reverberate. And pull that over from the other screen. There you go. And that's just the impulse response. I think I mentioned earlier, but the Bricasti are it's donation based. I don't know all the terms, but if you go to Google Simplicity, I think it might be simplicity.com, but do Simplicity Bricasti impulses, and this will pull up. You can download those. And this reverb plugin, I don't think it was very expensive. I got a deal on over at Pro Tools Expert. Love what those guys do. Shout out to Russ and the team. They've been a huge part of my up and comingness of mixing records and working in music. But they had a deal on this one, and it's really sweet. You can pull in impulse responses without having to fork out all that cash for Altiverb. If you guys are familiar with that, it's really expensive. And so let's take a listen to what this Sunset Chamber is doing. Very cool. And then this is also going for a little bit of a swimmy vibe, the Gyno Hall, and I've got that panned to the right because the guitar is panned to the left. I wanted to have a little bit of the space to the right. Let's take a listen to what that is. You hear the pre-delay tapping away. So that's that. Whenever I've got an element panned hard left or hard right, I will take either like a slap delay or a reverb or something and just bring a little bit of that in from the opposite side. So in this case, we had the guitar that's panned to the left. So I took the verb, panned it to the right, brought that in a little bit, created a space, created an ambience for it, and also brought some fullness to that part. So it's not just completely to the left and out all by itself over there. Moving on from that guitar, we've got ourselves the Shimmer guitar. This one I felt like it was cool. I think he used the Strymon guitar pedal. I want to say it's a sky pedal, sky blue, something like that. I'll solo this and take a before and after, the EQ and the verb. Pretty sweet effect. Just needed a little bit of love. Clean it up, put some top in, remove the lows and the mids. Very cool. And then probably got a healthy amount of this Gyno Hall. The Gyno Hall is the Lexicon 224. And I've got that set up for modulation. So as it decays, it's chorusing. The trails are chorusing so that it creates the modulated pitch effect. Very sweet. I love that. just kind of trickles away. And it looks like at some point in the song, I may be using the doubler. Maybe not. Nope. Just something I put on, false alarm. And that was that. Just a little bit of EQ. Get that one in the mix. I wanted it low. Jairus didn't want too much. The artist, Jairus Cole, good friend of mine, he didn't want too much of an ambient vibe on this song. He wanted it to be a little bit cleaner, a little bit tighter. And we actually had some synths and things that we recorded that we were going to experiment with to try to put a little bit of more of a pop electronic vibe to it. But at the end of the day, we just felt like, especially he felt like it was just a little bit away from the character of what he intended when he wrote it. So respected his word on that, and we ditched the synths, kept the reverb on that a little bit lower. And so moving on from there, those guitars are pretty straightforward. We've also got ourselves a guitar solo. And what I'm going to do for the guitar solos, I'm going to link to a video in the PDFs. You can go ahead and pause this one and go check that out, because I covered this from A to Z, the whole solo pretty much. The only thing I think I didn't cover was the automation. And for the most part, you can see that, pull up in the volume automation for these guys. Yep, so that volume automation stayed the same. Let's go. We'll leave it alone. But this right here, the level, I wrote that in. I've got a Personas, what's that called? The fader port. And so I took that and just kind of nudged up a little bit, brought back down, just rode that by ear. Felt that in where the notes went astray, but I forgot that I covered the solo completely over on the YouTube channel. So I'm going to link to that in the PDF. You can check out that video, and that covers the entire walkthrough of the blend of the guitars. I actually, in that video, also cover the amps that I used. I used the Chandler. Vic already had the native instruments, and then I also used either the Ingle or a second instance of the Chandler and blended those to taste, some basic EQ and compression. But I walked through this whole bit through on the channel. So instead of creating a longer download for you guys, I'm going to shut my mouth and move away from that, let you go check that out. And then coming up next in the next video, we are going to open up the keys and show how we supported the song with some things like upright piano, Rhodes, and a couple of very basic pads, some things to kind of just come in and move in, get out of the way whenever they weren't needed. So next video, here we go.